How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jason. I'll be your host today on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, we're going to be talking about how the Edmonton football team has finally chosen a brand new name, the Edmonton Elks. And I'm going to give my opinions on that and what really led us to that point in the name change. And I'm going to recap basically the whole saga today. But really quickly before we get started, if you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. A lot of good content coming up on the channel for this season, and with that said, let's get into it. The Edmonton football franchise, as we know it in the Canadian Football League, began play in 1949 under the name Eskimos. In the 7 decades under the name, the team captured 14 Grey Cups, by far the most in the modern era CFL. They also became one of the biggest brands in the league and led the league in attendance several times. However, as the years progressed, the conversation surrounding the nickname of the Edmonton franchise began to slowly change. I can only give my perspective on the last 15 or so years, since that's when I really began following the CFL, but the push to change the name of the Edmonton football team has really been a slow burn over the last decade or so. I can remember several reports each year of contradicting surveys about public opinion on the possibility of the name change, but there were also plenty of Indigenous leaders that spoke out about the name's offensiveness. So ultimately, information was really all over the place regarding the nickname Eskimos. And for a while there, the name remained, as the team remained adamant year after year they weren't making a change. The Edmonton organization even reached out to Inuit leaders on several occasions and claimed that the team didn't have to change the name because the Inuit leaders said that there were more important issues facing the Inuit people. But ultimately in 2020, during a year in which the CFL never took the field, cultural pressure truly pushed the term Eskimos off the edge. What I really believe did it wasn't actually anything Canadian related at all, but rather something that was happening south of the border. The Washington Redskins, a similarly storied franchise like the Eskimos, had long been adamant that they were not changing the team name, a sentiment that was constantly supported by team owner Dan Schneider. However, in the fall of the mass social justice and inequality protests across the US, many companies began to quickly pivot to show what they were doing to advance the cause of equality and social justice. As a result, many of Washington's biggest sponsors, such as FedEx and Pepsi, were threatening the cancellation of partnerships, among other actions, and ultimately the team changed its name to the Washington Football Team in July 2020. Roughly a week later, Edmonton also dropped the name Eskimos. And honestly, I don't feel like the team name ever does change for Edmonton if those external factors don't happen in Washington, and there's also a lot of other sports teams such as the Cleveland Indians, that were facing a lot of pressure and have since decided to change their name as well. Which leads us all the way back until today, when nearly a whole year later, the team has finally released its name, the Edmonton Elks. And let's talk about it. So Elks is honestly the name that I thought was the most likely in the process, and also the name that I preferred out of all the ones that were suggested by the team. The team put out a list in, I think it was March or February this year, and with a list of team names, and I will say is probably one of the worst letters of the alphabet to try to choose a name from, especially because all the popular ones like Eagles are already taken somewhere else, and as a result, you're left with pretty few options. And a lot of people were suggesting Empire pretty early in the process, and I thought that would have been really cool, really unique. But I understand why the team decided not to go down that road, honestly, because there's a lot of negative connotations with the word empire, with its colonial past and such, even though it's not really specific to one single group. And I understand why the team decided not to pursue that one, really right from the very beginning. And so as a result, they go with Elks, and there's also a lot of people complaining today that it's Elk, E-L-K, not Elks, with an S. There's just a big debate raging on Twitter today. The grammar police are out in full force, and personally, I don't really have a problem with it, even though I do prefer Elk. I think it just sounds cooler, the Edmonton Elk, rather than Elks. It just seems more fluid with just the elk, because it also means plural of elk, so that makes sense to me. But what I like about this name change is it makes sense. There's Elks in Alberta, and I really like that they didn't. They tried to stay as close to the team branding as possible because I think Edmonton personally had arguably the best colors in the CFL, and I'm saying that I'm a Hamilton fan. I love the Tiger Cats uniforms, but I think Edmonton has some of the best color schemes in professional sports, and so I really like that they're staying with the green and gold, that particularly um, shade of green and gold. And so I'm really excited to see how that translates onto these uniforms. And I'm wondering if they're going to change these uniforms in any significant way. I saw that they had antler on the helmet, and I really like that as well. I think that's going to be a really cool helmet design to see on the field. And that was really one of the first things that came to my mind when I was thinking about the name Elks as a possibility. And I'm like, oh, okay, that would be a cool design from a design standpoint. You don't really have anybody else like that in the CFL. And like really only the professional sports team that is really similar to Elk is the Milwaukee Bucks. And obviously they don't wear helmets. So I think the helmet designs on football teams are just super cool. That's something that's really unique for football. Really only like goalie masks in hockey or anything really like that. And so I really like the creativity that went into those helmets that I've already seen on the football team's website. I'm calling it the football team, but the Elks website. It's going to take me a while to adjust to that. But I'll tell you, the one thing I do disagree with when it comes to this name change process is the way that the team handled it. And I get that, there was a lot of resistance to wanting to change the name. The Eskimos name was just so well remembered by a lot of Edmonton football team fans. And, I understand why there was a lot of resentment and maybe they didn't want to talk about the name change as much. And as a result, I don't think they really wanted to promote it very much. And I think that was a mistake because I didn't figure out, like almost everybody, that there was going to be a name change until literally this morning, that there was going to be an announcement. And I really don't get that. Like, why wouldn't you set a date, at least like a week in advance or something like that, to get some kind of build up and buzz around your team, to get some benefit from conversation and word of mouth point of view around your football team brand? And it's a big deal to change a team name. And I really disagree with how they really handled that and how they just really just dropped a bomb on us this morning and said, okay, we're announcing it today. And even though I really do like the name, I just really disagree with the way they handled this entire process. I think they really could have got a lot more buzz surrounding the team than there was. But overall, I actually really do like the team name, and I think it's going to work in the future. And I think it's a pretty uncontroversial name when things get settled down here, when people get over the fact that the name Eskimos isn't coming back, and that's just the reality at this point. Even if you are dead set on loving the name of the Eskimos, like this team name is never coming back. It's a part of the history, sure, but it's never coming back as it is. And people complain about team names all the time. People complain about the Seattle Kraken new NHL team name. Saw people complain at the time about the Vegas Golden Knights, even though I think that's grown to be quite the beloved team name over the years since they joined the NHL. And for a CFL example, I remember back to when I was watching the Ottawa Red Blacks reveal their team name with a couple buddies back in the day, and I just remember when they were like, "We are Red Blacks," and it was just like dead silence, like at a point when they announced that name. And it's just like, I remember the initial reaction around that name was not very good. I think this name change has been better initially perceived than Red Blacks was, and I'm not still too crazy on the Red Blacks name, but I've grown to like really appreciate it. I really like their logo. I think it's one of the best logos in the CFL. And the point is, it doesn't really matter what your team name's called because you'll eventually become to know that team franchise as that. And that's exactly what's going to happen in Edmonton. But anyway, guys, those are just my thoughts on the Edmonton name change. I would like to hear everyone's thoughts in the comments section. Please let me know what you think about this new name change. It's a big deal. And the end of today's video. I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Once again, my name is Jason. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is by hitting that like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. I appreciate all the support, and with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.